In the night from Saturday to Sunday, snow had fallen. Where yesterday the dark ravines had still gazed out like mysterious eye sockets, today lay gleaming snowdrifts as though the slush and mud had never existed. The old man, stern and bent from his 8th decade, stepped out onto the porch of his house. One could see that the legs, long accustomed to long forest treks, still held their master firmly upright. "Well, here it is at last, Timka," he said quietly, turning to the shepherd dog that had followed him out. "Been waiting too, have you? Now we can start getting the skis ready. We'll let this first snow settle and pack down, and then you and I will head into the woods." Timka, used to the old man's long monologues, listened attentively, shivering slightly in the gusty wind. "All right, let's go back inside to warm up. You'll have plenty of time to get cold later." The old man had many cares. Over the past 10 years he had lived on the forest's edge. Much had become routine: chopping firewood, hunting game, simple but wholesome food. Though his back had begun to stoop a little, his legs and eyes still served him faithfully and true. Yet this first snowfall had changed his usually stern and somewhat gloomy mood into something joyful and almost surprised, as if a snowstorm were some extraordinary, rare event. By morning the snow had stopped, but the old man only glanced out the window, leaving the skis untouched. It was not until the second day that he packed a knapsack with provisions, gathered himself for the journey, and cheerfully called to the dog. "Come on, Timka, out into the wide world. You've gone all soft indoors." The day passed quickly. He checked the old familiar places, set his traps, and 2 white hares hung heavily in his hunting bag. His heart felt light and glad. As they neared the edge of the forest, the dog suddenly grew restless and burst into ringing barks. "What's the matter, Timka? Why all the noise? Or are you just happy we're heading home?" But when they reached the cabin, the old man understood why Timka had barked. Smoke was rising from the chimney. "Well, Timka, looks like we've got guests," he said, hurrying forward. Inside the cabin it was warm. By the window stood a tall man of middle years. "Welcome," said the old man, dropping his hunting bag onto the plank floor. "Timka scented you from 2 versts away. Gold, not a dog." The visitor was already moving toward the door. "I had to come in without the owner. Please don't hold it against me. I lost my way, wandered off the path, and then I saw the little house. I'm only staying the night, and then I'll be on my way." "What are you saying, good man? If you come with good intentions, how could I possibly be offended? We're always glad of guests." He nodded to Timka to be quiet. Cautiously, still not fully trusting, the dog approached the stranger, sniffed him, and then, as though having done her duty, lay down in her usual place. "There now, even Timka has no objections. Let's get acquainted." "Stepal Alexei," the guest said, extending his hand with an open, slightly shy smile. "I'm a teacher from the forest settlement." "Stepal?" The old man raised his eyebrows in surprise. "So you're the one teaching my great-grandson, Maximka?" "With me, yes," the teacher replied quickly, adding, "I'm pleased with Maxim." "Of course you are. He's a bright boy and good-hearted, too. He dried mushrooms for me last summer, enough for a whole year." "And how should I address you?" "Pacome. Grandfather Pacome." "And your patronymic?" "Pacomich, same as my father." "Come, sit down. Why are we standing? I'll put the kettle on, heat the soup." Stopal sat on a chair, watching as the old man bustled about, setting out simple food on the table. "The soup's excellent. My late wife taught me how to make it. She knew I'd be keeping house alone for a long time." "Why don't you move in with your son?" Maxime said they've been asking you to come live with them lately." "Ah, that Maximka, that little rascal." The old man chuckled. "Yes, they ask, but I'm used to it here. My own master, and in winter it's easier to hunt from this spot. From the village it's too far, and anyway—" He fell silent, leaving the sentence unfinished. Over supper, the conversation flowed slowly and warmly. Stopal listened with interest as Pokomich spoke eagerly of the forest, of hunting, of life. It was clear the old man was glad of a listener, for the teacher mostly kept quiet. The candle was already guttering, weariness settling in, yet Pacom went on talking. Stopal listened half in a doze until one phrase suddenly jolted him awake. "Who could possibly know what I'm thinking?" Pacom broke off. "Who? You, of course. Were you listening at all, or did you fall asleep?" In his excitement, the old man hadn't noticed he had switched to the familiar thou. "Sorry, Pokomich," Stopal smiled into the dimness. "I got drowsy. I didn't catch everything, but I still don't understand. Who could know my thoughts?" "Who else but God? From him, my friend, you cannot hide. You can hide from people, but from him, never. What did you just think? He knows and he wants to help you, so everything turns out right, according to truth. But do people listen to God? Someone once told me I'm a relic of the past. Nowadays, folks are busy with themselves, always looking for their own advantage. They think untruth will bring happiness. I pity them. They're robbing themselves blind. My own son Yuri thought the same, that with cunning and tricks he could build a good life. But there was never peace in that house." "In which house?" Stopal was fully awake now, startled by the revelation. "The one he lives in now. I'd have moved in with him long ago. All this talk about hunting and being my own master, that's only half the truth. The whole truth is something you don't tell just anyone. It hurts because he's my own flesh and blood." Stopal was silent, afraid to break the sudden openness. "You don't pry, you don't ask questions. That's good. I'll tell you myself. The evening calls for talk and you're new here. Maxim spoke well of you, so I'll open my heart." That house in the settlement stood empty for years. 30 years ago, maybe more. It was built for lumber workers on the outskirts. When the cutting finished, they abandoned it, and it stood empty for 3 years. Then Nastasia appeared in the village with her little boy. No one knew who she was or where she came from, but you could see at once she was no ordinary woman. Educated, courteous, kind. You know which Nastasia I mean. Anastasia Andreevna herself. Stopal spoke without thinking. Her. That's the one. Later, she went to teach at the school. At first, she just lived there, hunted game to get by. Her boy, Andrushka, was about 5 then. She tidied the house as best she could. Old Savelich patched the roof. She spent the whole summer and autumn there. People got used to her. Then a businessman turned up in the settlement, Tristanov. Somehow he persuaded my Yuri to start an artel for processing squirrel pelts, promised help with sales, gave money, and he had his eye on that house, out of the way, far from curious eyes. Yuri took to the idea, and the money tempted him too. He agreed. How Tristanov managed it, I don't know, but he got papers in town saying Yuri had bought the house long ago and was only delaying the move for lack of funds. With those papers, they went to Nastasia. It was already November, early frosts. She said, "Where am I to go with my boy with winter coming? Wait till spring at least." But they pressed on. Yuri moved in. Nastasia was taken in by the former school director's wife. They all crowded together in a tiny house. That's when Nastasia started teaching at the school, teaching the children to read and write. turned out she had a degree from some institute, but she never boasted about it. I begged Yuri not to take that sin on his soul. God stands like a wall for widows and orphans, but Yuri only laughed. You're behind the times, Father. Nowadays everyone looks out for himself. Yet, in the end, God's truth prevailed. Anastasia Andreevna is now a respected person. She put the school on its feet, knows her work. And she was granted amnesty. We learned later she had been exiled. Her Andrushka grew into a fine man, upright. Whenever anyone has trouble or need, they go to him. He never turns anyone away. My Yuri has been restless ever since. He has everything, money, health, but more greed and anger than ever. His children grew up the same, always trying to please themselves and harm others. Only Maximka is different. His soul is wide open. When I look at him, my heart rejoices. I pray to God that grace stay with him, that the family not be utterly forsaken. Perhaps through Maximka they'll understand how to live. People. It was dark in the room. Stopel could not see Pahomich's face, but he sensed the tears that choked the old man's words. That's enough. Let's get ready for bed. I've talked your ears off. Pahom stood resolutely and went to the stove bench. Stopel lay awake a long time in the half-light. Outside the window, tall firs stood white, and between them, like something from an old fairy tale, hung the moon. In the morning, Stopel, still half asleep, heard Pahomich bustling at the stove, lighting the fire. "Well, awake at last. I see you're not sleeping, just lying there." The old man chuckled into his beard.
"Pakamich, how did you know? I hadn't even opened my eyes." "Live as long as I have with Timka," Packham nodded toward the dog, "and you'll learn plenty. Timka doesn't need eyes to know if I'm asleep. She hears it in my breathing. I'm still dreaming my last dream, and she's already at the bench. Come on, enough lying about. Look out the window. What beauty God has painted while we slept." Stobel threw the blanket over his shoulders and went to the window. He rubbed his eyes with his fists like a child, hardly believing what he saw. "3 eyes? You don't see that every day." The dawn of the rising sun had touched the snow-laden fir tops with the faintest pink. The drifts, still in shadow, shimmered in shades of blue. Then the sun reached them, and they sparkled like diamonds, white, sky blue, rose. It was hard to believe this was only snow. 10 minutes later, it was gone. Beyond the window stood the familiar white forest again. "If I hadn't woken you with the stove, you'd have missed it all," Packham said with a conspiratorial smile. An hour later, each went his own way, Stopel back to the settlement, Pakamich and Timka to check the traps. Time flew by unnoticed. In the forest settlement, everything followed its usual rhythm. Christmas was not far off. People prepared as best they could. Some cleaned their houses, others their souls. Stopel carried a bag of books just arrived by post. He had promised his daughter. Now there would be something under the tree. Smiling, lost in thought, he nearly bumped into a passerby. He looked up and saw Pakomich. "Pakomich, you here? How did you come?" "Oh, my friend," the old man's face shone. "Such joy has come to me. I never dreamed, never hoped, and God arranged it all in his own way. After all these years, my son has made peace with Anastasia Andreevna completely. He repented before her for everything, and she, bless her, said, 'I forgive you. I hold no grudge. Who among us is without sin?' Now life will go well. I've already moved from my little cabin. We'll all live together, and Maximka, how happy he is." "What about hunting? The cabin, Pakomich?"
For a moment, Stoppel pictured the snow-covered, lonely cabin in the woods, the cold stove without fire. What hunting? My legs are still strong. I'll go running with Maximka from here. And now everything will be done in kindness. If we stumble, God will show us the right path again. He is our only hope. Without him, we're in darkness. That's it. I must run. No time to waste. My great-granddaughter was born. They named her Nastasia. Stoppel stood a long time under the falling snow, watching Pacome walk away. In that sincere, steadfast faith, there was nothing contrived or bookish, no pretense or affectation. Yes, thought Stoppel, he is right. In God there is strength and power and joy. And for the first time, he imagined Christmas in a completely different light.